Hi, I'm John Turner, and I serve as a conservation policy advocate for the Seatuck Environmental Association. One of my passions as a naturalist on Long Island are birds. And if I was to ask you, what is it about birds that make them distinctive or distinct, you'd probably first say feathers as an answer, maybe eggs, but then again, of course, that reptiles lay eggs as well in one mammal. And then you might think, well, the bird's ability to fly, but of course, we've got bats. Um, and we're also very distinctive about birds is their repertoire, vocal repertoire, the ability of them to sing such complicated songs and to be able to produce so many different calls. I think yet another aspect about birds that's highly distinctive are their nests. And what's fascinating about bird nests is they truly come in pretty much all shapes and sizes. There's one bird, a bird called a fairy tern, which doesn't lay a nest at all. And if you go online on the internet and you can look it up, it's amazing. This is a tern, which we do have tern species on the island, that's found in tropical regions of the world. And that female bird will lay her egg in the crook of a branch. And apparently it doesn't very often fall out. And she's able to incubate that egg, hatch out the young, and raise them without ever creating a nest to give it security. But nests are really fascinating for birds, and there are a whole variety of different types of nests. As I mentioned, you got the fairy tern, but you've got birds that dig burrows to create their nests, like belted kingfishers on Long Island and bank swallows. You've got other birds like barn swallows that create mud nests. There's a whole group of birds that build their nests inside tree cavities or in rock cavities, but more typically tree cavities. And the group that comes to mind there, most notably, of course, are the woodpeckers, often the very birds that created the cavities to begin with. And you've got small woodpeckers, large woodpeckers, and therefore smaller and larger cavities. And by the way, as an interesting note about bird nests, is that there's some direct kind of correlation between bird eggs and the type of nests that the bird makes. So birds that nest in more open areas that have cup nests that we'll talk about in a little bit, that may be in a shrub or in the grass, very often have eggs that are camouflaged a bit. They've got patterns and scrolling on them, dots, to help them blend in a bit better. While nesting birds that utilize cavities, like woodpeckers, and another good example is screech owls, their eggs tend to be just overall kind of an unglossy white in color, thinking that there's no real advantage to them to have cryptically colored eggs because the eggs can't be seen well in a dark cavity to begin with. So if you give some thought to the different, again, types of nests that birds make, there's also kind of a general rule, at least I've observed, and that is typically the larger the bird, the larger the nest, and the greater prevalence of using larger materials like sticks and branches. And one great example I can give to you is ospreys, an iconic bird, the fishhawk as we call it on Long Island, that builds its bulky branch nests on platforms and in dead trees throughout the coastal areas of Long Island. Even bigger versions of those big stick nests are what bald eagles create. And in fact, I think the heaviest nest ever recorded was a bald eagle nest. I think it was found up on the Great Lakes that weighed almost 2 tons and was almost 20 feet across. That must have been one sturdy tree that was able to sustain that nest for many, many years. Other types of nests are more fine in nature, and that's typically birds like songbirds that will create nests made of fibers and vines and rootlets and sometimes milkweed down. And they're, again, much smaller size because they don't need to be very large. Another interesting issue about nests is where they're located. You've got nests that of birds, a lot of birds nest on the ground. Almost all shorebirds, like a piping plover or an American oyster catcher, birds that we have on Long Island are willets. They are ground nesting birds. Piping plover nest is hardly a nest at all. It's just a mere scrape or depression in the sand, often or occasionally adorned with some shells, white shells, thought, by the way, to help reflect heat to keep the eggs at a slightly lower temperature, to nests that are elevated a little bit off the ground, like grassland birds utilize. Eastern meadowlarks, grasshopper sparrows, and a whole bunch of other grassland-dependent birds nest a little bit off the ground amidst the kind of grassy matrix that's created in prairies and grasslands. And we have those on Long Island, particularly out at the Calverton property or the Epcal property, where the best remaining grasslands on Long Island exist, and where our best hope of actually preserving habitat for these grassland-dependent bird species is found. You have some nests that are higher up in off the ground in shrubs, and I'll be showing you a few of those in a minute. And also, you continue up, you'll find nests that are up in the tree canopy. You'll find owl nests, great horned owl nests, crow nests, blue jay nests, the nests of a whole variety of other birds, hawks, different hawk species like red-tailed hawk and Cooper's hawk, nest high up, basically in the tree canopy. And so not only do birds use a great variety of materials to construct their nests, again, anywhere from just a burrow in sand to a sandy ground to vines and grasses to bulky branches, their nests can be pretty much anywhere from the ground up to the top of a tree, just depending on the particular kind of habits and niche of that particular bird. I think one of the most fun things to do in playing animal detective is to go out and try to find a bird nest. So that's the challenge for viewers today, is to walk around your property and see if you can't find yourself a either current bird nest that's being used, or perhaps a nest that is an artifact from nesting in past years. I did that on my property just a couple days ago, and I found a nest in past years that was used by a Baltimore oriole. I found a robin nest. I found a song sparrow nest. I found a mourning dove nest. I have also reason to believe that there are mockingbirds, catbirds, Carolina wrens, and cardinals that are also nesting on my property. I've had chickadees also and titmice showing up, but I have not seen any small cavities that they would be using, because they're cavity nesting birds too. They benefit from the work that woodpeckers perform, that is chickadees and titmice. But I don't think I have any of those on the property. So let me show to you just a few of the nests that I found. Here is a nest from past year. You can see it's kind of starting to fall apart, but this is a nest of a Baltimore oriole. And they are very distinctive in their shape and their location. A female oriole almost always will construct a nest the outer branches, lower hanging branches of a tree, which fully leafed out so that the nest is concealed. And to watch her weave, and that's the true word, that she weaves this fibrous material together to make this pendulous or pendant shaped nest. In this particular case, what I found is something a little disturbing, is she actually used a lot of plastic strips and plastic fibers, as well as some natural materials, to construct her nest. And that's just a little bit of concern, because the fear that a young hatchling could perhaps have a piece of plastic wrap around its body, around its neck, with fatal consequences. And you can see here's some pieces of that. But if you take a look in your neighborhood, street trees, you'll be able to find, I hope, a Baltimore Oriole nest. Again, it's a pendulous sac that hangs down from the tree. Often most visible, not surprisingly, in the fall and winter time because of the loss of the leaves makes the nest stand out a bit better. Another nest that I have here, totally different in shape, much bulkier, is a robin nest. And you may ask, well, John, how do you know it's a robin nest? Because a lot of nests look like this. They've got a deep cup that's constructed with finer materials, and then kind of less fine, more coarse materials around the outside of the nest. Well, I know this is a robin's nest because of the mud that's used. Almost all robins, not almost, robins use mud in the construction of their nest to adhere it together, and it makes for a very, very fine nest, and nests that will persist in trees sometimes for several years before they slowly kind of dissolve away. The last nest that I just found the other day in a shrub on the side of my yard is this one, smaller. I think you can see it's smaller than the robin's nest, and it's got a beautiful, finely structured inner cup. This was created by a song sparrow, which is a common breeding bird on Long Island. Gets the name song sparrow because it has a very beautiful three-parted song that you can hear routinely, and I hear them all the time. It's sure it's the pair that created this nest and raised their young already. That's in my yard. So again, these just a few of the nests, and so I challenge you to go out as your mission today or the next couple of days and report back to SeaTalk on our website what nests you may be able to find. Perhaps you could take a picture and send it to us. And if you can, try to identify what nest it is. There are a couple good field guides that one can use to help you identify bird nests. Kind of the classic one is the Peterson Field Guide series to bird nests. It's oldie but a goodie, and you've got a whole bunch of pictures of the different nest species. Excuse me, the nests that bird species use. And there's a couple other guides that you could use as well. So happy nest hunting, and I hope you enjoyed the video about bird nests. Thank you.